If only life were a straight path to our desired destination, wouldn't life be so much easier? Yeah, maybe. But those unexpected zigzags in our path teach us that life's tough struggles have greater purpose than we ever imagined. Stories and strategies are our focus for Season 4. Zigzag and One host, Melanie Brown, chats with courageous women who share their stories of encountering zigzags and how they fought to overcome them. Be assured their stories will inspire and encourage you. But we know warm and fuzzy feelings aren't enough to equip you to fight those challenging zigzags in your path. So, this season, our guests are joining us for another episode to share strategies, mindsets, and habits that strengthened and empowered them during their toughest seasons. Join us in declaring, zigzags may interrupt our path, but they will not detour us. We will keep moving forward.
Welcome to the Zigzag and One podcast. Discussing strategies, habits, and mindsets with my guests this season has given you, the listener, a glimpse of the extra conversations I am honored to have with the overcomers I interview. Oftentimes, I learn so much about how an overcomer navigated the zigzags in her path after her interview. Such is the case with today's guest, Eva Aigner. Since interviewing her in early 2020, Miss Eva and I have chatted quite a few times. Each time we chat, I learn more about the hope that fills her mind and her heart. At 84 years old, her mindset of hope has strengthened her and carried her through many difficult life challenges. I'm eager to reintroduce you to my friend, Miss Eva, so you too can hear her wisdom and experience her joy. Please join my conversation with Eva Aigner. Welcome back, Miss Eva. I interviewed you in April of 2020 about your story as being a Holocaust survivor. What an incredible story. It was in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day. And for those listeners who haven't listened to her interview, make sure you check out episode 22. Miss Eva, it has been an honor, and truly an honor, that you and I have continued to build our friendship by occasionally getting together on Zoom and just catching up and chatting and encouraging each other. And I have enjoyed that immensely. And what I have found, Miss Eva, is that your attitude has just been so positive, even as we talk about different things that have happened to you throughout your life. Even though I interviewed you 2 seasons ago when we weren't doing strategies and habits and mindset episodes, I wanted to have you back, and you said yes. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about the mindset you have, and that is the mindset of hope. That's one of my most favorite words. How would you define hope?
I define hope by always making a choice for thinking of positive things that faith, God, your family, your friends are with you to help you through hard times. And as long as you feel that you are not alone in the battle of life's issues, what it handed out to you, you can somehow bring hope in that and know that you are not fighting it alone.
I would agree with that. I've had that same type of experiences in my life, and not being alone, having friends, having family, having God be there with you and knowing that they're supporting you and encouraging you is incredibly valuable. I think of Hebrews 11:1 when I hear you say hope. And that verse says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. And we're going to talk about the do not see part throughout your journey as we talk today. Honestly, I feel like that verse is a nice segue into the different zigzags that you have faced during your life, and how hope, which is not something that we can see, we definitely can feel it, but we don't see it. But that hope has carried you through. Let's go back to very beginning when you were a young child and you were in the Holocaust. We won't go into a whole lot of those details because you've already shared that in episode 22. But I do want to pick up where your mother was taken away. It was just you and your sister. Tell me about how you felt, and then how you felt hope of hopefully one day seeing her.
I was about 7.5 years old when that happened. And you'll be surprised how much when traumatic things happen in your life that you remember so clearly. It was hard to understand the politics, the war, what is really going on. I felt fear all the time, but I always felt secure because our mother was so protective, so loving, and took such a good care of my sister and myself. My sister was 8 years older than me, so she was past 15. One day, the Hungarian militiamen came and took her away because all the able bodied people were still taken and transported to the different concentration camps, which we didn't know what is happening at the time. The only thing I just felt the separation, horrible anxiety. You totally lose your security when the last adult in your life is taken away from you.
Yes.
And my sister stepped up to the plate as young as she was. She became my mother at that moment on. And she always said, let's hope. Let's hope we're going to see Mama again. And I remember that like it was a mantra, and we were hoping and praying for that. As it turned out to be, this through a miracle, it came true that we did reunite, and she escaped en route to the camps. We united while my sister and I was in the line to be ready to shot into the river of the Danube. And there is still a monument over there in Budapest, Hungary, on the side of the Danube for all the young people, children, sick and the old, who was killed at that time. My mother recognized my sister's crying voice in the line, and she saved us with her wedding ring.
I think that is such a beautiful story. It's something that I have thought of often in the last 2 years, especially anytime someone mentions the Holocaust. I think of you and I think of the miracle that happened. But I love hearing the part about your sister. That's new. That's something I didn't know about. Her telling you to continue to hope and to pray that you would be reunited with your mother. And it happened. You were liberated, and you moved where after that?
So we remained in Budapest, Hungary. We went back to our place where we lived, and we started our life through the Soviet rulings, because Budapest and Hungary altogether was liberated by the Soviet troops at that time. So then it became a communistic Russian ruling. Life was again very difficult. It wasn't free. You were not free to say things, or you ended up in a jail, and sometimes your own neighbors reported you if you heard you listening to the Free Europe radio. So we had a difficult time at that time. I wasn't quite, 19. I was still 18 when I met my husband, who was also a Holocaust survivor. And he was always very proud because after courting for 59 days, we got married. He very old-fashionedly asked my hand from my mom and my sister. Everybody find him a wonderful man, and we got married.
He knew that he had a wonderful woman in you, so he wasn't going to wait around and take the chance of you deciding you wanted to see someone else or not him. But then you stayed in that country under communist rule for how long?
We lived under communist rule for 11 years. All churches, synagogues, worship, house of worships were closed. Religion wasn't allowed. I never grown up going to Sunday school or really learning about religions like the every child would when you're going to school, because we were not allowed. In fact, we were not allowed to get married in a synagogue, because if you do, then you would lose your job and you had consequences. Only way I learned faith and hope that my mom, I would see that she would always say her little prayers and would close the windows, even during communism, to light her candles on Friday nights because she was scared what if the neighbors see it and she would be reported. So this is how I grown up, but it stayed with me because I saw how hopeful my mother was. I saw how hopeful my sister was, and this hope continued.
I know that you were in Hungary for 11 years under communist rule. Why 11 years? What happened at the end of 11 years?
Hungary was liberated by the Russian Soviet troops from World War II and Nazism, January 18, 1945.
Yes.
Then in 1956, October 23rd, a revolution broke out in Hungary against the communist ruling because we had no freedom. We had no freedom of speech. We had no freedom of practicing any kind of a faith. We had no freedom of press. Even if you listen to the Free Europe broadcasting on the radio and a neighbor heard it, and if they reported you because they were in the Communist Party, sometimes trucks stopped front of the house and picked up the people and they ended up in Siberia.
Wow.
So we constantly lived in fear. So the revolution broke out, and it was just 6 months after my husband and I were married. We were totally newlyweds. Life was very difficult. In fact, I have to tell you an incident how my husband saved my life. We were early in the morning, like around 5 a.m., we heard for bullets flying all over.
Oh my goodness.
And some of the people from the Russian groups went up to the apartment building across from us, and they used machine guns and went through every single apartment because they felt that maybe some people who was involved in the revolution was hiding there.
At your apartment?
Everyone, we lived in an apartment which was 4-story high. We were on the second floor, but every one of them was shot into through the window. And so we were sleeping, laying in bed. My husband, because he also, after the Holocaust, being in camps, he had to be drafted into the army for another 2 years. So he knew what bullets can do and what it sounds like, and he pulled me off of the bed. Our windows shattered and the bullets were right on the floor.
Wow.
So we lived in this kind of a condition, but it looked like the revolution was winning. The Russian troops pulled back. And then in November, they came back in the middle of the night and just blew the city and the country apart, took Hungary back again. And this is when my husband and I made the decision that we do not want to start a family and raise children in a country which will not be free again.
So how did hope play a part in that when you decided we got to get out of here? Because I'm sure it wasn't an easy task to just decide, hey, we want to leave, and then you get in your car or on a ship, or I'm sure it wasn't easy. How did hope play a part?
It was a very difficult decision to make, but we really hope that somehow we can make it. As history tells, about 150,000 Hungarian people escaped at that time because we did find out that the border, which always had explosives on from Hungary, between Hungary and Austria, not to be able to escape to a free country. Just before the revolution broke out, somehow all those mines were picked up, all the explosives were picked up. That's how people were able to escape. So we were hoping, we heard that some people already escaped, that maybe we could also make it. We went to talk to our families, and my mom didn't want to come with us because my sister was very ill. She had pneumonia, and this was already December, middle of the winter, very cold, knee-deep snow. So she said, I won't leave my daughter, when she is not well. We decided we still want to go. And then we went over to say goodbye to my husband's dad and stepmother. And my mother-in-law had a son here in this country who also lived already in Portland, Oregon. Said, I want to see my son. Can we go along? Well, they were quite a bit older. She had quite a bit of health issues, but we decided if they want to come, we're going to go together. We decided to go on Christmas Eve because we figured that somehow we can maybe get to the border town easier. So we got on the train just with a backpack, with a change of underwear, and took the little money what we had, Hungarian currency, and took off toward the Austrian border. A Hungarian secret police was coming up and checking people's identification, and they were asking, where are we going? I guess we looked very honest, and we said, we're going to go visit family because of the holiday.
Oh, wow.
They checked out our identification and they let us go. Close to the border, we got off of the train. We didn't know absolutely where to go. And we looked at each other what to do. The snow was knee deep. My mother-in-law couldn't handle it. So there was a little horse and buggy with a farmer sitting as the driver on it. And we asked if we could possibly get a ride. So we could put my mother-in-law on that. And he plain looked us into the eye. He says, are you escaping? And we didn't know, can we trust him? Can we say yes? Can we say no? But we had no choice. I said, yes, we are. So he put her on this, into the buggy, and she had a little suitcase. We had, all three of us had just a backpack, and we walked along and followed him. And he took us into his home, and he had a big barn. And in that barn was already a group of people. Evidently, he was helping people to escape.
That is an incredible story.
It still makes me choke up.
I can understand why.
So we got into that barn, and it was adults and children alike. So by the time we arrived, altogether it was 13 people, 4 children, and 9 adults. And the farmer said, okay, I want to help you. You might as well give me your Hungarian currency because it's not going to help you. It doesn't worth anything out of here, which was true. So we did. So we ended up with absolutely no money, and whatever little valuables we had, we gave him. And he said, I will help you through the border. And he gave each of us a white sheet because it was so much snow all over. And he said, when you cross the border, the Russians are all around here and they're throwing up flares, which will make the whole field look like daylight. But just hover under your sheet until the flares go down and move on. We waited, it was about 1 a.m. when we left the barn. He helped us through. My mother-in-law couldn't handle the walk, so my husband took off his leather belt from his pants and tied it on her suitcase and pulled her on that. It was like a sled. So did my father-in-law help. And we were not sure if we are in Austria already or we are still in Hungary when the flares came. We sort of lost direction. And we followed his advice and we huddled under these white sheets, and we could hear the Russian language, but we still didn't know where we were. And we thought we never going to get out of here. And I so remember my mother-in-law started to pray and chanting, and then pretty soon everybody was praying and hoping that somehow we make it. And then my father-in-law said, I see a light very far away. How about, Les, if you watch out for the woman, I'm going to take off. And he went with another gentleman from the group, and we're going to walk over there and see where we are. We just have to take the chance because we're either going to freeze in this snow or we were going to be captured. So we were hovering over there. Finally, it got so cold, the children were trying to be quiet, but they were crying. So they picked up some corn husks, which was on that field, and built a big fire. We decided we don't care who's going to capture us anymore. We just can't stay here. We're going to freeze to death. And then a miracle happened. All of a sudden, tractors were rolling in. When my father-in-law and this gentleman knocked on the window where they saw a light, people answered in German. It was Austria. And he spoke German, and he said, there is people out there on the field with children. They need help. They're going to freeze out there. So they rang the church bell in this little town called Eibuchel, and the town woke up. They heat up a little potbelly stove in the school, and they took us from the field on these tractors and trucks into the school building. And this is something I will never forget.
My goodness. It goes back to that Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Wow.
So that's how we got saved. And I have to say, these townspeople were wonderful. And we were not the first group of refugees who went through. It so much remind me of what's happening today. My
Yes.
heart goes out to the people in Ukraine because I know what it is to leave your home and leave everything behind and go to the unknown. But life is precious. And I think the choice we made and the hope we had helped us through. And just to make my story a little bit lighter, this is how I received my very first pair of nylons.
I wasn't expecting that, Miss Eva. Tell me.
This little lady, older lady, of course, I was 19. Everybody who was even 40, I thought at that time was older. She said, I have nothing to give you, my dear child. Somebody gave me this pair of nylons, which I never going to wear, and maybe you can use it one day.
Oh my goodness. Did you wear them?
I arrived with her to Portland.
That is fantastic. That is so cute.
In fact, and it was so touching. It was a difficult journey from there on too. It's a lot of difficulties ahead, but our hope kept us together and we made it.
It shows the beautiful side of humanity in helping others. That's what we need so much in our world today is we need to be helping each other. I don't want to get off on a tangent though, because I know part of that story is that you then made it to the United States.
So President Eisenhower allowed 35,000 Hungarian refugees to come into this country. It was so many refugees that he also, after the 35,000 was in here, some people already left in October after the revolution was won. But we didn't have intentions to leave if everything was going to be normal over there, to leave that early. So by the time December rolled around, the quota was filled. And by miracle, while we were in Austria, this quota was extended with another 5,000 people. We didn't know that those 5,000 people were expected to have an affidavit of acceptance in this country that somebody would guarantee their welfare. We left this little town, Eibuchel, where we stayed for a few weeks until we got our strength back. Actually, they set up an orphanage where the refugees stayed. And from there, we took the train to Vienna. And the refugees didn't have to pay for the plane tickets or anything because we had no money, we had no nothing. We had food given to us in different areas, and everything was a lifesaver, whatever we received. We got into Vienna. We stayed in a place which called the Rothschild Spital, which was an old hospital, which a lot of times they used after World War II, and this time also again for refugees to stay. And from there, we got up the next morning when we arrived to Vienna and wanted to find the American consulate to see how we can come to America. We got to the area and it was like several blocks long lines.
Oh, goodness.
It was lines and lines, and people were holding the lines, and it was still cold, very cold, holding the lines day and night. And if it was a family, they changed to hold the line. So my in-laws, my husband and I, we got on to the very end of the line. Well, I never been a very big person, but when I was 19, I still braided my hair just to keep myself clean while we were in these conditions over there. I had long hair and I looked, more like a kid. I said to my husband, I'll be back. I just want to look around. How long is the line? And somehow I walked those blocks and got up to the front of the line. And I saw that they were calling in families. A common name in Hungary is like Smith here called Kovács family. And this was a family who walked in with about 5 or 6 kids. And somehow I got in between them and I walked in with them to the consulate. I don't know how I got the guts, but I just thought I have to see what's going on here. And got into the consulate, and this was an old building, beautiful building, huge pillars. And I hid behind the pillar and watching what's going on. And I saw that somebody comes out of the office with a piece of paper, gives it to the police guard on front, the paper with the family name, and then everybody's yelling down on the line, such and such family. So then she dropped the papers in a trash can. I took one of the papers, turned it around, put on Aigner family, walked up to the police, and I put on my one and only backpack, which I had everything it had in it, so I don't quite look like a refugee, and left it behind a pillar, walked up, and didn't make any eye contact. I just handed the paper and walked back toward the office. The next thing I heard, they yelling, Aigner family, Aigner family. And my in-laws and my husband was devastated. Where is Eva?
Look at you.
They came in, and from the pillar, I said, Papa, nobody, I saw them coming. They didn't know where to go. I said, Papa, you speak German. Nobody called us. You have to take over. So here comes the miracle. My husband's stepbrother already had an affidavit of acceptance, but it's just for his mother. But because we were a family under the same name, they wouldn't separate us. And we got into the last 1,700 people who was allowed to come into the United States. On the last boat called General Leroy Eltinge, which interestingly enough, it was taken apart in Portland, Oregon, not too long ago.
I don't even know what to say about that. That is just incredible. Just think if you had waited in the line appropriately, your life would have been drastically different. So you made it to Portland, Oregon.
On train, 4 days, 4 nights, sitting in a wooden chair, a wooden bench.
And then your sweet husband, Les, have lived in Oregon for how many years?
Well, we arrived to Portland, Oregon in February 8th of 1957. Our brother-in-law, my brother-in-law and his stepbrother was waiting for us at the train station, and he took us into the restaurant there. And of course, we just couldn't believe it. The food, we were not, had to get used to everything. But the abundance of food and everything being available, and it was just unbelievable to us. He rented a furnished apartment for us. Life started from there here in this country.
And how many years has it been since then?
It's 64 and a half.
And through those years, you had Les with you, and then you had 2 children. give me an update on that and how hope has played a part over all of these years, the zigs and the zags and the challenges that you faced throughout all of these 65 years, almost 65 years.
Well, arriving to a country with nothing, just like I say, a little backpack, it's very difficult. Husband, brother was just happened to be that he was laid off at the time we came, but yet he shared a little what he had to help us get on our feet. And we all lived in a one-bedroom apartment. This was the first time I saw a Murphy bed. We had a Murphy bed. Everything seemed like to us, that little apartment, it just seemed like it was a palace and it was peaceful. And but we got started. We took all kind of a manual jobs. I was cleaning houses. My husband was doing yard work. We had to pay the rent and somehow, make ends meet. And my father-in-law got a job in a warehouse as a night watchman. But it was very difficult because we didn't speak the language. The first thing we did, we started to go to night school and to learn the language. So everything was very difficult. And there was a very interesting thing. The first 4th of July, nobody told us there is such a thing as fireworks to celebrate on that night. And so all of a sudden, on the night of 4th of July, we heard gunshots.
I can see why you would think that.
I thought we all jumped up and we said, oh my God, we came to America and now it's a war here. What's going on? So we ran down and asked the manager, and it was mostly sign language. What's going on? It's poof, poof, boom, boom. What is it? Holiday, 4th of July. So this is how we learned our first tradition in America. It was a happy ending.
I bet so. And I know that you had mentioned to me before about the hope of having a family and raising them in an environment where you were free. Talk to me about that and why hope was such an important part of that.
Well, we so much wanted to have a family. We lost so many members of our families during the Holocaust. And my husband lost his mother and his 9-year-old sister. I lost my father, my grandparents, and between us, I can't even tell you how many people. We didn't want to give birth to a child in a country where we always have to worry about what the future brings. So when we had our first child in 1960, 3 years after we arrived, I was keep thinking, my in-laws were getting older. What would happen if anything happens to us? Who will raise these children? We are in this country alone. And I remember there wasn't a night that I didn't pray that please help us to live long enough to raise our children. Well, just think how this hope worked out and how blessed we were. We had a son after my daughter born, and they both blessed us with two grandsons, and my oldest grandson blessed us with two great grandsons. I have to say that I feel blessed with all the issues, hardships, what I went through in my life, that I'm still here. I can share my history, not because I want you to think that I'm any special. I'm not. I'm a human being like anybody else. But how fortunate I feel that we were able to keep our strength and get through all these hardships with hope. Well, Les was a forever optimist. This is how he survived. He really valued life every single day. His mantra was, you have to live life fully, because this is my way of showing that the Nazi regime maybe took my family, but I still had my hope.
Yes.
For life. His passing was a tremendous shock to me, but this is something that we have no control over.
But because of your faith, you have hope that you will see him again.
I feel that way.
Miss Eva, this has been just wonderful to spend time with you and to hear stories that even through our conversations over the last 2 years, I haven't heard until today. So I am grateful for your time and for you sharing your heart, and close us out with one last thought about the mindset of hope.
I feel that if you don't have hope, you are lost in this world. You have to have hope that things will turn around and your life will get better, or you'll be able to go through what comes up in your life.
Well said. Hope is so, so important.
Mhm.
So important. Thank you, Miss Eva. It has been a joy. Can't wait to see you in June.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Miss Eva.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. So remember, when life zigs and zags, keep moving forward.